Thank you, and good morning for joining us on this somewhat dark and rainy morning. It's on mornings like these that digital presentations really come into their own. So we're here this morning for the first in a series of webinars from ICT SkillNet called Skills at Scale for Artificial Intelligence. So my name is Paul Hearns. I'm a journalist and commentator in ICT for more than 20 years. So I'm going to share my screen this morning for our agenda slide. So just bear with me for a moment. So hopefully you will be able to see my screen there at the moment. So we have a number of speakers with us here this morning. So Anthony McCauley from ICT SkillNet is going to give us an overview of the series and the theme for this morning's session. Then we're going to have Horacio Gonzalez Velez from National College of Ireland. And Horacio is going to give us a kind of an overview, the sort of AI for business in 60 minutes. Which is the overall session, but he's going to condense it to 10. So then Edward McDonald from CDAR, the Irish Centre for Applied AI, is going to take us through some of the current use cases around AI in business and enterprise. Then we're going to have Alessandra Sala from Shutterstock, and she's going to take us through the specific applications of AI in the area of image management and usage. So then we're going to have a panel discussion with audience Q&A. So throughout the session, we're going to invite people to be as interactive as possible. So what we're going to do is we are going to ask people to give us not just questions but comments as well, and we're going to run a number of polls then to get people's input as we go. So it's going to be quite an interactive session. So please do feel free. At the bottom of your screen, you have the Q&A and you have the chat function. You also have raise hand, and our producer Sarah this morning will be able to bring people on mic on camera if they wish to participate in that way. So just a reminder then that the session is being recorded for later use and distribution, and all sessions will be available through ICT SkillNet. So if you go to ictskillnet.ie and go to the YouTube channel, you'll see the materials there. So also on ictskillnet.ie are a range of courses and resources for your further education. So I'm going to hand over now to Anthony McCauley, AI Network Project Manager for Technology Ireland ICT SkillNet. And he is leading the SkillNet's Artificial Intelligence Network, and it's designed to build pathways for business leaders and enable them to take advantage of the transformational change taking place within the business environment. So as I said, Anthony is going to give us an overview of the series and this session. Anthony.
Good morning, everybody. And as Paul said, I am the program manager for Artificial Intelligence, the Artificial Intelligence program within Technology Ireland ICT SkillNet. I hope you are all well and have your coffee and scone and get comfortable for the next 60 minutes. And this is about the power of applied intelligence. And what is it? Well, it's a series of webinars which we're going to bring together key influencers, decision makers, industrialists right across the horizon to talk about various topics with respect to artificial intelligence. Today, we'll talk about a guide to AI in 60 seconds. As Paul said, Horacio will give an overview of some of the technology involved. Edward about how you build business applications through collaboration, through the work that CDAR do. And Alessandra, how you actually apply that in a business context, computer vision, and the whole area of marketing. But then we will go on throughout the series to talk about other areas such as how do you actually enter into the AI market? How do you go from awareness to adoption to impact? How do you transform your business to become an AI-ready business? And so on. Importantly, how do you turn AI into a return on investment? Who's investing in AI? Where is the smart money? What are venture capitalists saying? Where are the safe bets? And then how do you make sure you can trust AI and deliver a business with trustworthiness balance, and avoiding bias. But the power of applied intelligence is part of a bigger initiative which the Technology ICT SkillNet is undertaking. And part of this is called Skills at Scale. And this is because we want to materially impact the skills gap which exists at the moment for artificial intelligence. And we want to do that by looking at what we've called pathways. And we've looked at pathways, and we are going to offer pathways from a business perspective, looking at things such as strategy, organizational transformation, data product development, but also looking at technology and looking at infrastructures and analytics and building AI applications. But more importantly, is also looking at how do you bring together that intersection. And this is where businesses become very, very much in their own in terms of success with respect to artificial intelligence, understanding the value of data as an asset, digital leadership and culture. And the whole idea here is these pathways will be defined. They're very much based on evidence, what's being reported within the Irish context, what's happening from the OECD, from the World Economic Forum, and from our own members, what they are telling us is important to them as they want to enter the artificial intelligence market. So these pathways will be defined, addressing business, technology, and the intersection between both to deliver business leadership and technology leaderships to enable success. And as part of that, we've already launched a pilot. And that pilot, the Skills at Scale pilot, will run from November 15th through December the 10th. And because you are here today, you obviously have a very keen interest in artificial intelligence, and we're going to invite you to take part in that pilot. At the moment, we have 5 different areas: data science for business leaders, which looks at data science in general, looking at artificial intelligence, no programming, no technical knowledge required, moving more towards business leaders who want to maybe delve a little bit more into the technical capabilities. Data visualization is a huge area, particularly within the Irish market. And then we've identified other areas around machine learning, SQL Server, and Python. The pilot runs for, as I said, it's a 4-week period. You pick a pathway to go through. It takes about 4 to 5 hours a week, and there's a certificate of accomplishment at the end of it. And why are we doing it? We're doing it because we want to test and validate the pathways themselves, to validate the approach, the content, the quality, and to make sure that it is filling the gaps which we believe exist and which you in industry require. And just before I get back to Paul, hand it back to Paul, I would like to say that this is very much your forum. The power of applied intelligence this morning, the skills pathways and the skills at scale is for you. And we want to get your feedback. We will do that hopefully through the polls, through the questions you will ask, but also through your feedback. We want to shape this in a way that is accessible to you within industry and across the spectrum as you operate within artificial intelligence. So it's your forum. We feed and we very much want to get your feedback, and we hope that you'll take part of this pilot. We'll issue the registration details after this. From that, I'll hand it back to Paul and leave it there.
Thank you, Anthony. And just to reiterate what Anthony was saying there, this really is an interactive session. So please do use the opportunity to pose questions, and we'll take them as we go, as you think of them, and I will address them to the speakers as we go. So we're going to move over now to Horacio. So Horacio Gonzalez Velez is Head of Cloud Competency Center at the National College of Ireland. And he has more than 20 years experience in technology and academia and joined NCI in 2012. He directs NCI's cloud and data analytics infrastructure, postgrad programs, and research and innovation studies. So he's also on the steering group of Technology Ireland's Innovation Forum. So welcome, Horacio.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So basically, I have the daunting task of trying to make sense of artificial intelligence in 10 minutes. So that's going to be an interesting one. And first and foremost, for those of you who have been before, so I'm Horacio González Vélez. I always start by saying that I'm sort of Irish, because if you were to study Spanish, you will know that the H is silent, and so therefore my name should be O''RASSIO, Horacio. That would be a proper way of my Irishness. And despite my youthful looks, as Paul was saying, I've been in this business for over 20 years. And as I was saying, I'm going to try to make sense of artificial intelligence and provide a quick introduction. So this is going to be a tough one. So I wouldn't be an academic if I don't start from the sources. So strictly speaking, the concept of artificial intelligence started in a city in Dartmouth in the US, in the East Coast. And it started as a summer project. Okay, so it was a research project in August 1955 by 4 people, led by John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Rochester for IBM, and Claude Shannon. Claude Shannon, of course, is very well known because of the communications. And the idea of this project was to make machines use language, form abstractions and concepts, and moreover, solve problems researched for humans at that time. Okay, so the idea was trying to mimic what a human could do. Okay, and that leads me probably to the best description I have from, and this is literally at the back of a napkin, for artificial intelligence. So it's not mine, it's from the MIT Technology Review, and strictly speaking is Karen Howe. And Karen put together this, and I thought this is really interesting, because typically we think about artificial intelligence, and I'm just going to take the outermost branch to the left, and it's about seeing. No? So if I said, can it see? If the answer to that question in the terms of the program or the application I'm looking at is no, then no problem, it's not artificial intelligence. If it can see, okay, but it cannot identify what it is, therefore, it is just simply a camera. Okay, so we go back. And from that perspective, what it's important is always to make sense of that side. So we're here, so if it's just a camera, I go here. And if it can identify what it sees, then it's probably using computer vision and image processing, and I can class it as AI. And with this very, very simple 5 branches of this algorithm, one can actually start making sense about that. A very common one that we always see, it's the outermost, again, from the right, and it's, can it reason? Yes or no? If it can reason, can it look for patterns in massive amounts of data? Yes. If the pattern can make decisions, then it's machine learning. Okay, so I leave it as part of this presentation, and it's really simple. It's just a few steps. And in summary, what it does is, if it can mimic to a certain extent the senses, see, hear, read, move, reason, and then process, you can think of applications like computer vision, NLP, natural language processing, speech recognition, robotics, machine learning. Okay, so that's in a nutshell. And if you recall it, I was talking about 1955. So for about 50 years, there were always the promise of artificial intelligence. There was always the promise of artificial intelligence taking over the world. But I think the turning point for business applications of artificial intelligence, for a better description, the revival of artificial intelligence, in my point of view was in 16 years ago in the DARPA Grand Challenge. So as it turns out, the DARPA, the national agency in the US, set a contest such that the first autonomous vehicle that could traverse a given course in the Mojave Desert in California will be awarded $2 million. And of course, a number of institutions and organizations participated. And this is the photograph of a vehicle which was manufactured by Stanford with a number of, as you can tell, a number of sponsors. And in 2005, they won the first DARPA Grand Challenge contest. So that's the first time a autonomous vehicle got the $2 million for going 132 miles with no human intervention. But the highlight of this is the back end of it. So this vehicle, okay, had 7 onboard Intel servers, lots of processing, GPS, 6 degrees of freedom inertial measurement, a wheel speed, lasers, radar, sensors, stereo cameras, and of course, lots of ad hoc software. So I guess what I'm saying is it was the conjunction of a number of technologies and software that made sense of that specific part. And from then on, the field of artificial intelligence started to be recognized beyond the confines of academia and just very niche applications. It started to become widespread knowledge. Machine learning per se started to be recognized. And by now, we take for granted a number of applications that are suitable for artificial intelligence. It's very good to diagnose diseases, translate languages, transcribe speech, play complicated strategy games, or create photorealistic images, or suggest even replies to your emails. I'm sure if you have your mail in your mobile device, sometimes you get annoyed that it tends to know more what you're doing. But still, artificial intelligence struggles to deal with things that haven't seen before, that haven't been trained for, or that cannot establish a cause and effect. So that's something that still is not good. So we have read numerous descriptions of that, and the new cat of that. So, and last but not least, I would like to leave you with what it's coming. This is, of course, the Gartner, as you know, the mainstream industry analyst, and this is the 2021 call for artificial intelligence. If we start from the left, this is still in the very early innovation stages, and we're going to be looking at a number of technologies that will be coming into play. I mean, different orchestrations of artificial intelligence, compressions of data models, governance, generative AI, so artificial intelligence that generates itself, centering in humans, decision intelligence beyond just decision making, smart robots and knowledge graphs. And once we get into this part of the graph, that's what we are seeing, technologies that are mainstream. And this part is typically when we can assume it's there and it's settled and it's can be of use. So it won't be a surprise that semantic search now it's mainstream, computer vision, autonomous vehicles, chatbots, okay? And any given e-commerce site will have that, intelligent applications, machine learning. So this part, okay, that it's between 2 to 5 years away or even less than that, okay, that it's there, it's where business applications are settling now. We know that they are mainstream. We know that they still are good to invest to get ahead in terms of business, but it's safe to adopt. So that's what I would like to see. And typically, and I have to do the commercial for my sponsors. We have a cost action sponsored by the European Commission, and we have a number of early career researchers who can help people sometimes in exploratory phases of projects. So these are free people who can do a small stay in a company or an institution and try to test a concept in a company or an organization. So that's, if you're interested, get in contact. And if you, of course, have any questions, I will be delighted to address them. Thanks, and I think I'm very close to the original 10 minutes.
Are indeed, and thank you very much. So I'm just going to get our producer Sarah to load our first poll, and as we introduce our next speaker. So thank you, Horacio. I have to admit I'm a great fan of that agency you referred to, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They come out with some absolute crackers in terms of what sound like ridiculous requirements, but they're probably responsible for pushing things forward quite a bit on a number of fronts. So
they had a small project that started in the 60s called the Internet, right?
Yes,
so they
indeed.
are pretty much behind the Internet. So they have a few small successes, I suppose.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much. Well, I see people are interacting with the poll there, and they're also adding questions and comments. So please do keep that up. So we're going to move on now to Edward McDonald. Edward is director of Ireland's Centre for Applied Artificial Intelligence, and the centre is funded by the EI, Enterprise Ireland and the IDA, and has more than 90 member companies across a wide span of industry. So Edward is going to talk a little bit about the specifics of building AI and some of the current use cases as well. So Edward, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and good morning, everybody. And thanks to SkillNet as well for giving me the opportunity to introduce some of the work that we've done and to ground a lot of what Horacio was saying in actual practical examples that we've worked on. So ScAIe, as Paul mentioned, is a technology centre, part of Enterprise Ireland and the IDA's programme of 8 technology centres. This one focuses exclusively on applied AI. So just one slide briefly introducing the centre. So ScAIe is a not-for-profit one-stop shop for all your requirements in AI, machine learning, and data analytics from beginning to end, and really everything in between. So the focus of the centre is really in building the capacity, the AI machine learning capacity of industries in Ireland, and to develop a sustained competitive advantage for them, and also to work with them in finding investment to move forward their AI products and services. So you can see here in what looks like a blizzard of logos that the centre has in excess of 90 member companies. 30% of them are multinationals, and 70% are SMEs. And as you can see from the range of logos, that it is a very, very broad spread. We work in satellite, to health, to process industries, to telecoms, contact centers, and again, everything in between. So what I've done for today's presentation is selected 8 examples of applications where AI is at work. So I'll start off with I suppose what could be considered maybe a more exotic example, very exciting one, in inspection robots. The other examples I quote are not quite as glamorous as this one. So this little robot, which you can see there climbing over the fuselage of an aircraft, not only is that very clever in itself, that it magnetically attaches itself to the fuselage, but it also has, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, a high-resolution camera with lights on it. So what the little robot does is it goes round and round the surface. Now, it could be a fuselage of an aircraft. It could be a huge grain silo, like the ones that we were working on too. And what it does with the camera, it's able to form a complete digital representation of the object that it's coursing over. And from that, then what we do is we do basically fault detection, visual inspection, or the artificial intelligence does the inspection, looking for flaws, let's say like cracks in the superstructure or welding faults or whatever. So there's an example of computer vision plus AI producing something very useful, because often these robots can go into places where it's very dangerous for humans to venture. So another area, and this is an area which over the last 3 or 4 years has become massively important, and we're seeing an awful lot of interest from our member companies, and that is what's called NLP, or natural language processing. And it's one of the fundamental areas of AI. So a few examples there of what we're working on. One, we have quite a large project with a company called Corlytics here in Dublin, in the world of fintech, specifically financial regulation, which is a very, very large burden for financial service companies. And there are increasingly amounts of rules and regulations coming out in this area, and more documentation than a human could possibly absorb and understand. So what we're doing there is helping financial service companies be able to process these documents and actually then give the appropriate rules and guidance to those sections within the bank for which the regulations are appropriate. Another example that we worked with a legal company was being able to automatically analyze legal contracts. And so looking at a legal contract, the system automatically highlights those parts of the contract which are a little bit unusual from any of the other contracts that the system has seen before. So this allows lawyers to very much speed up the processing of contracts and only highlight those parts of the contract which are a little bit more unusual. And I suppose a more example now coming from industry is that industry, particularly the process industries, generate a lot of what are called process logs. So these are records of the process as it's running. Again, a huge amount of text that's generated. And of course, it's so much easier if we get actually the machines to actually ingest that text and be able to find the hidden insights and use actually all that information as well to improve efficiencies of processes. So staying on the themes of document processing, which is and natural language processing, which is a very important area, is another example that we're working with in a company using machine learning for the automatic processing of invoices. Invoices come in all types of formats, in spite of the fact that a company might issue a template and say all invoices must appear in this form. You get so many varieties. And again, it's not scalable. You know, you can throw people at it, but you have to increasingly throw more and more people because of the fact that the variety is enormous with these forms coming in. But this is where machine learning can help. That it can actually pick out the pertinent information on the form, irrespective of the format that it's displayed in. So another perhaps exotic example here. So we're working with two separate companies using drones. One is mapping the coast of Ireland, particularly, I think that's the fire alarm. Hopefully it'll, stop now. That was close. I thought I was going to have to end the presentation immediately and pass back to Anthony. So unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. So it monitors the coastline of Ireland, mapping the endangered ecological habitats for wildlife. And we're working with Mana, whom we all know, on developing algorithms that allow the autonomous flight of these drones in delivery of packages or medicines to recipients and then back to the base again. So these are the exciting projects. Another few in green energy, for instance. we're working with SSE Electricity, and you might have seen the press launch for this, that we're able to predict with great accuracy the output of the wind turbines, and that very much depends on the location of the wind farm and the predicted strength of the wind, because in the energy market you need to be able to tell the energy consumers how much electricity you're going to be able to provide at a certain time on a certain day. Now, if we look at the consumer side as well, working with companies there to predict consumer demand, and one of the other areas, and we're working with several different companies in this, is in being able to predict when these machines will fail. They're very, very heavily censored, the wind turbines. And in fact, actually, there can be more than 1,000 censored inputs. So again, massively too much for a human to be able to ingest and understand. So with this and using machine learning, we're able to predict what component is going to fail. So therefore, a much better system of component replacement is able to be brought in, rather than replacing components every year, whether they need to or not. You should only replace them actually as and when they are about to fail. And taking that other example there of preventative maintenance, which is a big part of what's called Industry 4.0, we worked with a company that collects a lot of data from the pumps and valves that sit on the ocean floor and direct the oil and gas networks around the world. So again, a very hostile environment, very difficult to get at. But again, because these pumps and valves are very highly censored, we can predict when they're about to fail. So therefore, you can gracefully then charter a ship, let's say months in advance before the failure, and at your leisure, replace the pump and valve, rather than be met with a very serious ecological situation. In agriculture, we've fitted sensors to tractors, which are able then to be able to detect the quality of the grass and whether the field needs particular spot fertilizing rather than fertilizing the whole thing. Inspection of cattle to optimize their feed. We've worked in poultry houses, monitoring more chickens, and of course the sport of kings as well, being able to predict which horse is going to be a winner. So I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Last two slides. AI at work in production, a very important industry in Ireland. So that's video inspection of production lines and optimization of the production process to improve factory efficiency, and looking as well at the supply chain to optimize the supply chain and applying blockchain in the supply chain. So if you're interested in any of these and more, if you go and look at our website, we've got more than 70 of these little demos that are what we call our demos or our lighthouse projects as part of a test before invest offering from CETA. So these are available all at no charge for companies in Ireland to be able to try them out with our help. So thank you for that, and I'll pass you over now to Alessandra, I think.
Thank you for that, Edward. Some very interesting material there. So just a reminder, in the chat stream, Anthony has shared details of the Skills at Scale pilot, so please do feel free to jump in there. But just before Alessandra starts, there are a number of questions coming in there, so thank you very much for all of that. And I'm going to ask our producer, Sarah, to run the second poll just in a moment. I'm just going to share the results of the first one. So it was asking which of the following pathways is most attractive to your organization. So an introduction to AI for business leaders is by far the leader there, but there's some call then for other more technical approaches as well. So thank you very much for that. It's a great help in terms of informing the kinds of resources that are necessary. So I'm just going to stop the share on that one and ask Sarah to run the second poll, and then I'll introduce Alessandra. So Alessandra Sala is Director of AI and Data Science in Shutterstock. She's a research and scientific leader in AI and has more than 10 years experience in research and innovation. She's also an ambassador for women in AI in Ireland, a non-profit organization that encourages gender inclusive AI that benefits global society. So that's something we'll return to in the Q&A, I think, because the idea of inclusivity and tackling bias in AI as it's applied to systems is absolutely critical in terms of the use of the technology. So that's something I'm sure we'll get to explore. So Alessandra, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to ICT for having me here today. Welcome, everyone. And so we have heard a couple of very interesting presentations this morning. So I'll follow up on this run through AI this morning, bringing a little bit of experience on what it means to work on a company that is bringing AI product to market every day, and which are some of the challenges that we face. But before I go into that, I joined Shutterstock last year in October, so it's my first year anniversary this month. We have built a team. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We have also launched Shutterstock AI, a new initiative that brings data and insight at the heart of its mission. We have brought 3 startups because a way to accelerate your journey to AI, it's also very much around buying some interesting asset that can accelerate your time to market on specific offerings. Computer vision, together with predictive performance, recommendation system, and creative workflow, is a key offer within our Shutterstock AI ecosystem. And today I'll be focusing on computer vision in particular. Computer vision today is everywhere. We have heard from the presentation before this morning some of the example. It's changing the way we shop. It's changing the way we do sport, we do banking, we drive. So it's very difficult to think about an industry or a market vertical that cannot take advantage of this technology. At Shutterstock, computer vision is not new. We have been doing computer vision for a few years. So the way we apply computer vision within our own ecosystem is, for example, we have 400 million images at Shutterstock, and every single image is reviewed from a human to make sure all those images are of supreme quality and respect our guideline, IP, landmark, trademarks, and so on. So computer vision can help reviewers to accelerate the review process. Every single image has a title, a description, up to 50 keywords, and all those aspects need to be reviewed. So machine learning can automatically understand the content of the image, the technical style of the image, the technical quality of the image, and provide support to human reviewer to simplify their job. Also in our e-commerce experience, if you have a website, if you are in the retailer industry, you want your customer to engage with your offer. A way to engage with your offer is trying to understand your customer and provide them what they need before they even ask. Sometimes asking through words can be kind of difficult, but sometimes asking through images can accelerate the way you can describe something. For example, I like this image, I want something like this. This leverage computer vision to find all other images that can be similar to what you have just seen. So we come at computer vision as visual expert and creative process expert. As I mentioned, we have 400 million images, we have 20 million videos, we have music, both organic and synthetically generated through AI technology, we have 3D object and 3D model and text. Each of those asset, we call asset because our data of different kind, have a number of metadata, which are those important information that feeds into AI systems so they can be trained and be able to recognize different aspect, object, or able to make intelligent prediction. So, but I want to take a step back now and say, this all sounds great, but there is one thing that Paul and Anthony have mentioned before, and was about diversity and bias. We have seen that computer vision, among all the technology in AI, has been a great example of dramatic failure. So, and that's why, and I'm referring obviously to face recognition that wasn't able to properly detect and recognize Black skin and faces people. So diversity cannot be overlooked or be fixed as an end process, an after process. A 3 billion industry sideline because diversity wasn't even considered. And it starts with the data. So at Shutterstock, because we have these highly curated data sets of different kind, for us quality is of utmost importance, and diversity is one of those elements that differentiate us from everyone else. So we take this in great consideration. We have 1.7 million contributors from all over the world, because diversity can only be achieved if you bring in enough people that source data with diversity, with diverse style, with diverse culture, with diverse language, with diverse interest, with diverse background, over 150 countries. And we constantly keep this repository of data fresh with the +1 million data per week. So the data set that we collect, it's very much a representation of the diversity that we do have in the world in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of habit, in terms of color and food and regional preferences. And this is what's critically important to make computer vision solution, AI model, able to mitigate the bias that we have seen, shortcoming of the first generation of computer vision model. But it's not just about data, it's also about the team and who builds the computer vision model. I'm honestly super proud I'm in this country and I've been able to build my first 50-50 gender balanced team of AI experts from everywhere in the world. South Africa, Malaysia, China, US, Canada, Italy. If you don't recognize us, and it's me, Spain, and so on. So, but also when we bring those model in production, then we are starting to realize we are facing one more issue that I believe is important to discuss among the leaders in this country. And it's the AI engineering gap. Many people focus on the data engineering roles. Those are extremely important, but it's not enough. The AI engineering, it's those skills that help the data scientist to bring those models into production system in order the software lifecycle of AI project, it's very different from typical software engineering process. And that's where some of the AI projects fail. It's not in building the model. Building the model, it's about having few scientists, few expert scientists and the right data. It's bringing the model in production and constantly monitoring and updating the model, versioning the model, having it connected to an ecosystem of constant data in, and updating the model as you go. That makes this life cycle extremely different. It's not building, shipping to production and running there. It's a completely different life cycle. The tools, the library, the ecosystem, the classical database that apply to the AI world are constantly evolving, and setting up those systems, it's not trivial. AI engineers are those people who are able to deal with the tool that we cannot read in this image, but the point is, it's an ecosystem that is constantly evolving. It's a technology that is constantly evolving, and data science alone cannot really bring you to the finish line. So there is a shortage of AI engineers everywhere in the world. We are trying to hire in every single corner of this world, and it's not easy to find those experts. However, here in Ireland, we have a competitive advantage. So I want to talk about this and reflect with you leaders in this country on this important aspect. First of all, ICT SkillNet, it's not only helping us today with this new initiative that they will launch, but there are years of investment in this country to grow the skill set in the digital space, in the cloud space, in the AI and analytics and data science space, and in the software engineering space. So the investment that this country has made, and it's continuing to do every single day with new programs, it's creating an important differentiation that we all need to leverage more and to use to remind our companies' headquarters, maybe in sometimes in other places of the world, that there is a unique advantage here. Second, software development in Ireland is super strong. So having a great ecosystem of software developer that we can now take and upskill to become AI engineer, because from software engineering to AI engineering, the gap is much smaller than starting from scratch. So we should focus on investing on the software engineering pool of talent that has been built in this country. And on top of that, I've taken here the report of 2020 on the gender gap. Ireland is 7th in this index, which is great, but in the last year has even improved. And I can be a proof here with being able to build a team of super strong women and talented AI expert with years of experience and amazing talent that we can do here in Ireland, and I think it's very difficult to do in another country. So 3 things: the education, let's continue to invest in education starting from ourselves, because this world is constantly evolving and we cannot stop learning. 2, tap into the software engineering pool of resources and upskill them to become AI engineer, because is the things that is killing all AI industries. And if we can provide that resource, then this country has an even stronger technical advantage. And let's continue to invest in diversity, because this country is very rich in diversity. And through education, we can bring those diverse employees to participate in the economic growth of this country. And with this, I want to stop. I want to thank you, and I'm happy to answer possibly some question I'm seeing in the chat and in the Q&A, and I'm interested to read what's there.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. That's two very positive notes to finish on there in terms of Ireland's path to developing skills, but also diversity, because I think it has been highlighted a number of times how powerful AI can be, but only if the tools are informed for inclusivity. So that's it's a hugely important issue. I'm just going to share the results of the second poll. It said, how would you best describe your AI market readiness? And more than half said we need to upskill our business leaders to understand AI. So really tallying with the previous question about educational resources in terms of educating business leaders. So again, that's hugely useful information in terms of making resources available. So I'd just like to ask, that's great, Anthony and Horacio are online there as well, so back on mic. So again, just a reminder, we have the Q&A there, and I see that there are several questions coming in, and some have been answered already, but maybe again, just aligning with what we saw in the poll there, maybe Alessandra, we'll go to you first. There was a question there in terms of leading an AI team, perhaps without having a software background. So perhaps a business leader or a business unit manager directing an AI team, perhaps from a business perspective. Is that realistic? Is that something that you would see as a useful way of heading that sort of team?
So I've seen amazing leaders who were not technical in the space, able to achieve really great success. There are a couple of things. For any non-technical leader, I'm assuming non-technical on coding and the details, but generally well-informed. The leader needs to understand the business value of what they want to achieve. And having a technical person that can lead the technical development of that solution. So I think advisory sometimes is more important than people pretending to know everything. It's such a complex space, and it's constantly evolving, that even us that are technical in the space, we are technical within a specific domain. So we do one thing very well, we understand, we have that mental framework to understand the other aspect of AI. But the point is, technical advisory and technical people that lead the development team are enough. For technical leader, they need to understand the value of bringing that solution to market, how much it's going to cost, how they are going to scale it, and where there is a valuable business model behind. Let the technical team build the solution. There are millions of ways to do it. We are constantly inventing new tools. So being agile in, we're not building something that will stay forever in the way we're building it today. We need to build modules that we can quickly swap as we have a new technology. So build for modularity, build for agility, being agile in updating your technology, because it's the only way to be competitive.
I just add to that, Paul and Alessandra, that one of the challenges, and especially that we face actually, is when we work with businesses and industry, is actually we spend quite a lot of time educating and upskilling the business leaders in the art of what's possible. And then the next stage is the problem definition and the requirements gathering and mapping out a solution space, which is all a very, very important part. And again, you need, I suppose, these that skill that has 1 foot in the technical space and 1 foot in the requirements gathering and in the business interfacing, because there, I think there's a lot of lot of challenge out there because it is a relatively new field. People are trying to understand it and see where it applies to their business as well. So interpreting the business challenges and actually reducing them then to a technical solution is a big gap, and it's a particular niche type of skill set that is required in that. And I think that answers part of the front end of the question that the questioner asked there.
Well, I'd agree with that. And Edward picked up on something earlier. He talked about use cases. It's very much about defining business use cases, and therefore you need that business acumen that can look across, look at where business value is, look at where the diversity of data is within the organization. That's alternative data that adds competitive edge to whatever platform you're going to develop. So it's business acumen, it's a background in understanding the use case, where business value is going to be delivered. And I would absolutely agree. I was in a very similar situation. Bring in an expert in those fields that you can rely on and trust, and use that expertise in order to define your technical roadmap. But you need to be looking across the business and understanding what it is that's of value to that business in terms of use cases.
Well, that highlights an important point, and something that has come up in the questions as well, in terms of use cases where perhaps open source code was used so that it can be shared and actually examined by students. So are there examples that any of you are aware of whereby you can see a practical application, but where you can actually perhaps dive into code and to review it?
Yeah, there's lots of those around.
Right.
That's an embarrassment of choice there. And if the questioner wants to drop any of us an email, we'll point them to sources that would be very appropriate. And
again, that's something to highlight. Each of our speakers this morning, their respective organizations all have publicly available resources. So if you want to check out those, as well as what's been shared in the chat this morning, please do. But there was another question there, which
just a quick one about the open source. Specifically, Ireland is taking really a leading position on that. And I just pointed in the chat, there is an initiative called Inner Source Commons that it might be of interest for people interested in open source. So actually, Ireland is ahead. I mean, examples like the COVID-19 application that was open source and now it's leading in many countries. So it's worth taking a look at that one.
Very good, thank you. Just again, addressing one of the questions that came up in the Q&A stream there, and that was around costs in terms of supporting AI infrastructure and skills. So I suppose costs is a little bit like how long is a piece of string, but just in comparison to similar footprints in terms of maybe processing power and infrastructure, how does AI infrastructure compare maybe to more traditional infrastructure, just to give people a context in terms of costs? So maybe Horacio, do you want to deal with that one first, and then maybe we'll go to Alessandra on that.
Yeah, sure. Of course, it's how long is a piece of a string, and it all depends on the what the user and the organization needs to deploy. A good advice that was given, of course, by Anthony is to use sometimes the programs afforded by cloud providers. I don't know, Amazon or Azure. They have programs that they allow you to use some of their tools on demand to actually dip your toes in the water, start deploying some models, and that can be really useful to check what the cost could be. And of course, the advantage of using some of the open source infrastructure is, in terms of software, is that it will also allow you to have something that it's affordable. But it's both of them. That's a tough one. How much it will cost? It's how much should I pay for a car?
Yeah,
that's what we are going to be doing. Yeah.
Alessandra, would you like to come in on that from your practical experience in terms of what you've done both in research and in production?
Yeah. So it's important to go back to what Orazio said. It's very difficult to beat the cost of cloud provider like Amazon, Google, IBM, Microsoft. They all have their own offers. So we at Shutterstock, it's not a news that we are fully embedded in AWS offerings. And you pay those services for how much you use those services. So which also means if you're really using those services, it means that you're making business there. And therefore, there is anyway a return on investment by design. How much we spend in developing a solution versus bringing to production, it depends from the project. As Edward says, there are a lot of very, very good approaches in the open source community. So the research that is going on in the AI space, it's really strong in this moment, and we have very solid solution that you need to customize and adjust within your business need, but you have definitely a strong starting point. So the most important thing and the value that I see here in Ireland that we are unique is having places like Cedar that can be consulted, where you have this pool of experts that can help us to really define what's your business problem, what's the AI solution, and how much would it take for you to get from a proof of concept to a deployment, because you have experts in that specific field that can drive that journey. So leveraging more and more those centers that are available in Ireland, and investing into internship. So getting students to work with you early on, it helps them to be mentally prepared in the future to be hired and to be able to operate within your tech ecosystem. So there are a few important things that we can do in Ireland, because there is this concept of placement, there is this concept of research centers that are applied and are helping industry to bring AI to life. So, and there is a growing pool of experts.
Very good. And there's a useful comment there from Eric in the chat, where he, or in the Q&A rather, where he highlights the fact that costs have to be usually put into a business case for business leaders. So it is a good idea to have some element of the outer bounds, I suppose, to be able to present. But there is a question there for Alessandra in terms of does Shutterstock make data available for outside researchers for education and testing models?
So we do have some open source data set. They do not have a strong attitude in open source data set. There are industry, university collaboration that obviously have access to some specific data. So Shutterstock data set are not crawled in internet. Those are professionally sourced, paid material. And that's the unique advantage, is manually reviewed, is high quality, is photographers that are living within this ecosystem. So we release data set only when there is a purpose, maybe a challenge that we want to go after, or a specific university collaboration. So reach out to me and we can discuss. We are definitely open to collaboration.
Very good. Okay, well, I'd just like to come to Edward for a moment then, in terms of you presented a number of areas of application and use cases, but from your sort of broad perspective, what areas are emerging in terms of the application of these technologies? Are you seeing any new areas coming out that we should be aware of or would be of general benefit?
Well, there's I suppose, Paul, actually, the way I see it, it's almost like a two-dimensional field, because what we're seeing is technologies coming forward. Now, I mentioned natural language processing. That definitely over the last 2 years has been massive growth area. The other growth area has been in computer vision. Those have definitely taken off. But so there's that aspect. The other aspect that we see as well is that different industries start to become illuminated and excited about the application of AI. So if I look back maybe 5 or 6 years, financial services were really at the forefront. They were, I think, the first industry sector that got the message and invested very, very heavily in building up skills in AI. And there have been successive waves coming through. And I think actually that there has been a catalyzing effect because of COVID as well. And now we're seeing, you know, a lot of industries, the fast followers, coming forward in that. But it does go in waves. The utility industry there a few years ago wakened up to the opportunity that is AI. I see it actually in the conventional process industries and in manufacturing as well. So not only do you have technological waves, but you also have waves of industry sectors becoming enthusiastic for AI.
Very good, thank you. Well, just I know we're a little bit over time, so there's one other question there I'd like to address before we wrap up. The question there is, if you don't have software experience, then what chances do you have in the AI field that is full of software engineers? And what software languages would you require for AI? So I suppose that's a pertinent question in terms of somebody who may have a technical background, who is now maybe a business manager and who's leading a charge in development in some way to turn processes maybe through automation or something into using these technologies. So from that perspective, somebody who's trying to get up to speed is maybe technically informed but not a software engineer. Realistically, what way can that person go about educating themselves?
Well, what I'd say is that person is not alone. There's a lot of people in that space. What we're seeing in AI are people who are possibly in a technology background who want to transition into this space. That's what the pathways that we are building is directly for. So if they look at the pilot, there are pathways in there to give them a perspective on the AI, to give them a perspective on different technologies within AI. There's fundamentals and there's for people who are a little bit more expert. So that would be my first port of call. And as we develop those pathways, they should stay in touch, because that's exactly the type of person that we are directing this towards. Gartner have said that there's not a challenge with skills, there's a challenge with reskilling. So organizations and people reskilling, that's where we need to invest their resources. And that's what this scheme is totally and absolutely directed towards. So stay tuned and get involved with the pilot.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, well, listen, we're a little bit over time, but I can see that most people have persisted this far. So obviously, testament to the need for information and the interest there. So by the level of questions there and chat and everything, there's a massive need there. So thank you very much to everybody, to all our presenters this morning, to Anthony for creating this series, and a reminder that this is the first in a series. So please keep an eye on the ICT SkillNet site for this. So thank you to Alessandra, to Horacio, to Edward, to Sarah and Gillian, our producers off camera this morning, and thank you to everybody for attending and the huge amount of interaction that we've had this morning. It's great to see such a level of interest for this. So thank you very much, and we will hopefully see you at another one of our ICT SkillNet Skills at Scale for AI webinars. So thank you very much and good morning.